Welcome back to the Water Online Show in the Flow with Travis Kennedy, your host, coming at you live, maybe tape, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, here with my esteemed colleague, Mr. Kevin Westerling. Kevin,
Travis.
Kevin, this is a very special occasion here at the Water Online Show. I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, me too.
We're kicking off 2026 with the very first return guest of the Water Online Show.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you who are avid fans of the Water Online Show, you are going to recognize this individual. As a matter of fact, she probably needs no introduction, but I'm going to give her one anyway. But first, I just kind of want to set the stage for what it is we're talking about, sort of build this up a little bit. Is that all right with you, Kevin?
Sounds good.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's build this up a little bit because it really is an important issue. So I want to talk about how water utilities are facing a new era of risk. So we don't talk a lot about this, do we, Kevin?
Not in general, on the whole. We usually pick a topic and dive into that. But this risk in general, right?
Exactly. We're going real high here, right? So we're going to be covering a number of different aspects of risk and how it's managed. But anything from cyber threats to extreme weather to our favorite, Kev, aging infrastructure, right? Mm-hmm. Regulatory pressure, emerging contaminants. Today's utility leaders aren't just managing systems per se, they're managing uncertainty. So how's that for philosophy? I'm going real high level here. So in this episode of the Water Online Show, in the Flow, we are diving into water utility risk management, what it really means in 2026 as we start out this new year, how utilities are prioritizing threats, and the strategies separating reactive organizations from the resilient ones. How are forward-thinking utilities quantifying risk? What should capital investments be focused on? How can technology, asset management, and cross-department collaboration reduce vulnerability before disaster strikes? So all of these questions are sort of going through in my head, Kev.
And utility managers' heads, right?
Right. Yeah. So I feel like I'm in sync there, and we have the right person for the job. So whether you're leading a municipal system, advising utilities, or supplying critical infrastructure solutions, this conversation will give you the practical insights into building resilience and in an increasingly unpredictable environment in which we live today. Without further ado, allow me to introduce to you our guest for today, Miss Pam Elardo, Vice President of Strategic Services at Brown and Caldwell. Pam, welcome back to the Water Online Show.
Hey, well, thank you. And it's great to be back.
It's great to have you back. I mean, as I mentioned, you're the very first return guest that we have here on the Water Online Show. So there's no better way to cover the topic we're about to cover with somebody that we're just familiar and comfortable with. And we know that you're going to give our listeners and our viewers what they need and what they want as far as information goes on this topic. So let's start with risk in reactive reality. So that's what I'm going to umbrella this topic with. So a lot of utilities are operating in a constant state of reaction due to a number of things: staffing shortages, aging infrastructure, regulatory pressure, stuff I had mentioned in the introduction. From your experience, what are the most common risks utility leaders underestimate in these environments?
Thanks for the question. Before I get started, I want to say I've been around a long time in this industry and I'm still learning. And so I learn from people constantly, utility leaders, operators, people on the ground, people doing planning, people trying to navigate everything. And if there's one thing that's true, none of this is easy.
That's true.
And when you asked about the most common risk that we underestimate, I think the globally what's underestimated, not just by managers and utility directors, it's by the boards and the elected officials and the regulatory agencies. And what they underestimate is the complexity of risk. And it's not that there's one biggest concern or the issue of the day is the answer. What it is that level of complexity. And utility managers are really trying to understand that complex web and trying to communicate it. It's multiple layered, and it tends to be what's underestimated is the thing that pops up. It's like, oh, why didn't you deal with this issue? And it almost like a little whack-a-mole. The next equipment that breaks becomes the biggest issue. A call from a council member becomes the biggest issue. And so there's no one thing that we generally, I think, underestimate. I think what we tend to not convey well is that full web of complexity. And then when and in that context, like the whack-a-mole model, we become reactive, and then this sort of emergency response mindset becomes our dominant culture. And it's very stressful. And I felt it as a utility leader. But so there's two things I think we underestimate, somewhat by utility leaders, but definitely by electeds and the public, is just that level of complexity and the escalating risk that we face now because of uncertainty, because of the erosion of our current infrastructure. We don't have the luxury to plan and be proactive because we're constantly putting out fires in the state of reactivity. So I feel like when I'm trying to get it, is the cost of ownership is all those things put together, and conveying that to the outside is a key. One more thing, though, I want to add, because I'm a big advocate. I feel like I've become an organizational development engineer throughout the last 20 years of my career. And the importance of organizational health in the state of reactivity, it's hard to put your care and feeding into that organization as an important aspect. And to have an optimized utility, you need to have a strong organization. You need to pursue organizational excellence. And the organizational excellence piece, in my mind, tends to be underestimated and put on the back burner, because vision drives outcomes. Vision drives more capacity for your organization. And, we'll talk about that some more as we go through. But
I couldn't agree more. It all starts with who the human beings are behind the team and on the team to help get to the outcomes we're looking for. The more high-level vision that the team has, the better off you're going to be in being less reactive and more proactive. And I do, before we get to the next question, for the audience watching on YouTube and on Water Online, we did not give Pam a dress code. So right now she's sporting the exact same kind of quarter zip that we here at the Water Online show like to show off a little bit. Yes, Pam, I love the fact you came dressed for success. Yeah, Brown and Caldwell, I think, is
looking good.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we might be in some kind of lockstep with Brown and Caldwell in terms of color tones. But
back to it.
I'm missing the Seahawk logo.
Yeah.
Oh, world champs.
God, world champs. The Seattle Seahawks shout out on the Water Online show. That is a first, but we'll take it based on
that audio.
That's it.
So yes, back to ERM, enterprise risk management. And you mentioned that it is complex, and it's a bit abstract, right? So when you're talking about utility workers who are, doing the day-to-day operations, how do you translate the ERM concepts into like practical day-to-day decision-making tools that resonate with frontline staff and managers?
Yeah. Well, people are constantly managing risk on multiple levels. We're managing the risk of the enterprise every single day. We're evaluating options and making trade-offs, and we're often doing that without a good process or model to follow. And in order to best communicate risk, we need to understand it to a level where we can quantify it, qualify it, understand the impacts to risk on the individual assets, the individuals, and the organization. And enterprise risk management is a combination of tools that you can apply through your strategic objectives for your organization. It aligns your mission, your vision into those day-to-day decisions so that you're actually taking advantage of opportunities. Now, that sounds really nice, right? But we have many tools in our industry now that we use to manage risk. And we do it day to day. So like on a project level, there's a risk register. Risk registers are an important tool. And we even have SOPs, work orders, job descriptions even are a system for risk management. Examples are everywhere. Asset management program, following those approaches help us really drive risk to lower levels, and that's what they're about. So it's really a systematic risk approach that we're talking about. I love models. I love a good model for process engineering and control, right? You don't have to necessarily adopt a model and get certified in it and all that, but the tools within that are very important to our industry, and it really helps us be more systematic in defining what we're doing. It provides us a common language for how we interpret risk in our organization. And to be honest, there's a lot more external interest in how we're managing our internal risk. How, kind of feeds into that first question. It is unprecedented times and uncertainty. And it's kind of like the game is up about being honest about the cost of ownership and what it really takes to run a healthy, sustainable organization. There is a quote, and I can't remember where it came from, but it says, "I'd love to prioritize risks, but I am book solid with emergencies." So
I love it. Yeah, that's a bumper sticker.
Can't do that, right?
Yeah.
So what we're really looking for is how to create this financially stable future when we're busy putting out fires. And, I think you're further in this conversation, I'll give you more examples, but I'm excited to kind of explore that deeper.
One of the things that really sticks out in my mind when we speak with utilities is their struggle with being able to get and secure funding for things that haven't even happened yet. So it's a lot easier, and this is universal, not just for water utilities, but universal in the law of business and in the world, that it's a lot easier to get investment and dollars after something goes wrong in order to fix it than it is to say, hey, in 6 months, this has a really good chance of failing. We need to address this now. Can I have some money? So, I mean, utilities often struggle to justify proactive investments to boards, to ratepayers, all of those involved. So how can leaders use risk-based thinking to better align capital planning and budgeting with long-term resilience rather than just use it on short-term fixes?
Okay, so
a lot in there. I know. I just threw a lot at you.
Okay, I'm starting a movement, and that is for us to be honest about the actual cost of ownership.
Yep.
Or running a utility. I have another concept that actually was spoken by a leader in our utility. One of the places I used to work at, a public meeting, and there were council members in the meeting, and somebody asked, what's the next investments you're going to be making in your utility? With the thought that we're doing okay, but we need to do more.
Yeah.
The answer that was given was, what the next best, most important investment is? Secondary treatment. Everyone's like, what do you mean? You already have secondary treatment. Because people don't understand. You don't just buy an asset, put an asset in, and then good. The care and feeding of that asset, the optimization of that performance is actually creating the best return on investment for the environment and for the public health that we're serving, right?
Yeah.
Hands down. Okay, so what's the reality? We're in a hole, right? We're forced to put new assets in by regulatory pressures. I'm a big advocate of the Clean Water Act. I believe in combined sewer overflow control, for example. However, when we're put upon by these mandates without understanding the impact to the rest of the organization is where I feel like we're less honest about what's really going on, right? So, awesome. Right. So the full cost of ownership, identification, communication is where we need to put some time and thought. And that really is an enterprise risk management model. And once you can quantify all of your risk based on honestly looking at the cost of ownership. I feel like utility directors and managers, for the most part, they understand that, but they're caught in this web of the new and the next and the pressures from communities and regulators that you just keep going along. And it's almost like hope is not a great strategy.
That's true.
Yeah.
We use that in our own business.
Yeah.
So like the reality is, once you have a good quantification of risk and in your for all your assets and for your organization, not just assets. I'm talking like staffing, regulatory training, the whole complex web, right? Then you could communicate it better. You could look at your capacity that you have currently and what you need in the future. And to ask for a budget that fills the big hole, honestly, I don't think of budgets anymore in percent increases, because even though that's the thing that gets out there, if you had an artificially suppressed rate for decades because you failed to adequately invest in your infrastructure, and now it's double or triple, well, maybe that's okay. Maybe you're paying $20 a month and you should have been paying 80 or 100. Right. Who knows? I'm just throwing out numbers. But when you look at the percent increases, where people start to kind of freak out, right? But that level of transparency and honesty, and using an enterprise risk management approach to be able to quantify the gaps, right? Where you're currently at, your current capacity, and then where you need to be to really be a financially stable organization. And just the last thing I want to add on this, it's kind of like the game is up. We can't keep it under wraps anymore about the importance of that base infrastructure investment. There's a lot more external eyes, not just from the boards and the public.
Yeah.
Insurers, bond rating agencies, investors, they want to know. And they're asking hard questions of utilities for us to maintain our bond rating and decent insurance rates.
Yeah, a lot of those questions aren't easy ones to answer. But you're right. They want to know.
Yeah, I don't know if this one will be either. But you mentioned staffing, and we talked about how risk is very broad. I'm thinking about, like, we talk about all the time around here, the silver tsunami, so to speak, the retiring operators at utilities. Some call it brain drain. So that institutional knowledge leaves with them, and that can create a sort of risk in itself of just, the risk around losing them. Are there any strategies to help mitigate that?
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, like where your staffing is at and their capability, that current capacity evaluation is important, right? And then as you look at using risk management, you're not just looking at today, you're looking at what the future needs. And we have a lot of tools, right? We have tools to help us use technology to bridge that gap and other things. So this is a good time for me to talk about my experience with maintenance best practices. And it really speaks to this upfront investment piece, but also logically looking at people in the process. So hopefully I can do this in less than 3 minutes. But when I was at King County, I had the best career. I started as a regulator at the Washington State Department of Ecology, really got into the Clean Water Act. I wrote NPDES permits. I did enforcement. I did TMDLs. Then I worked at the King County Wastewater Treatment Division. And I was just, my jobs changed and I was growing there. And eventually I was in the capital delivery program, put in a new facility called Brightwater for King County. And then I was the asset management manager. And then I was a treatment plant manager.
Okay. Wow. There you go.
Okay. So as we're adding a new regional facility, the council said, I want you to add that facility with zero increase in your operating staff. And brilliant people, not me, but brilliant people are like, okay, we need to optimize how we do maintenance. So we adopted reliability centered maintenance approach. We hired a consultant to help us utilize that methodology. And so I started asset management kind of intimately. I started the delivery asset management. Then I became the plant chief when this stuff's getting implemented. And I'm dealing with the people part of this transition. And what RCM did and how we approach it is we looked at every single asset, how we tagged it, set up really robust criticality analysis, looked at every single preventative maintenance order, looked at how we can optimize how they all fit together at the treatment plant. systematize our work orders to include like visual documentation of how this is doing, clipping it to videos, putting it in a tablet, and using this as a training concept for folks. And then we moved to getting more reliability-centered design, so getting more of our operational input to how we actually design stuff to minimize our maintenance impact on maintenance. So what we were able to do is start this brand new third large regional facility with no staffing increase because of the tools that we applied and systems that we used to get there. And so that's a good example of a tool and in our ability to like assess our current capacity, look at the capacity we're going to need for this new system. And if we put this all in terms of cost of ownership, we've lowered our cost of ownership overall for the entire system because we're able to really look at the specifics of activities on the plant site to optimize our maintenance approach.
I mean, as far as a comprehensive story that directly answers the question that Kevin just asked, I appreciate that detail. So that's quite a journey you were on.
Yeah, and I got to say, the timing of me being at the treatment plant and dealing with people's emotions about how, in some sense, some of their autonomy was lessened, but their effectiveness like exploded.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like that's the other thing when I talk about underestimating or not looking at your organizational excellence there. Like that is the key to success because you have to manage, you have to help people in this transition. Like to become excellent, you have to transform, and the transforming is an intentional process, right? It can happen to you, or you can actually make it work. Yeah,
and that's universal with any business, right?
Exactly.
And so wastewater is not necessarily isolated from that. The Water Online Show is powered by Water Online. Whether you're a drinking water or wastewater operator, an engineer, or a part of the industrial water community, you know that this industry moves fast. Regulations change, technologies evolve, and challenges keep on coming. That's why so many professionals rely on Water Online. At Water Online, we break down the most important updates in regulation, spotlight the latest treatment and process technologies, and share practical, real-world management solutions that you can put to work immediately. It's information built to save you time, improve your operations, and inspire action. So if you're serious about staying ahead in the water and wastewater community, there's only one place to go: wateronline.com, where the industry goes to stay informed.
And we're back with the Water Online Show. And Pam, I got you all to myself now. Water Online. So much going on here that our illustrious host had to depart for the moment, but we will continue on. We'll plow forward, and we got some interesting things to address here. So what about when we're thinking about risk? We're trying to balance both short-term needs and long-term, right? So, when systems get strained and you're not putting out fire, so to speak, those long-term goals like sustainability and carbon neutrality or the circular economy, which we're really striving towards, they can feel out of reach. So how can utility leaders keep those strategic objectives alive without overwhelming teams that are already stretched thin, as we talked about?
Well, I think if we take risk as really a strategy, a strategic lens by which we look at all our programs, and we're identifying and managing risks. And I'd like to think of maybe an example. So one of the risks is cost of escalating commodities, cost of electricity, energy going up, right? And so in order to reduce risks, we have to analyze those, but also take advantage of opportunities. And to me, that touches on the circular economy and sustainability issue. So if energy costs are going up and we're flaring biogas, because that's the cheapest option to flare biogas, we're creating a vulnerability about our energy system and our energy security. And so we could take that circular economy and make it work for us. We could capture the biogas, we could create electricity or heat for our system, and therefore we're participating in the circular economy, and we're also reducing risk. And I know that there's some terms are loaded now, like sustainability or green energy and all that. When I come across people who might be skeptical, I'm running a business. I'm running a nonprofit business as a utility leader, and these are good business decisions. These are reduced risk for us. If you just look a little bit bigger picture, like a higher level of the onion, a community, not just a wastewater utilities fit in communities. On a bigger scale, they're managing food waste. Food waste goes to landfill generally, but to take that food waste and use it beneficially to create more biogas, again, you're creating a circular economy, but you're participating in a bigger boundary condition. You're participating at your whole community level, your city, your county level, and even larger than that, because when you're transferring food waste to landfills that might be way out of your region, you're participating in helping that circular economy, and it's good for business. So if you're established and you establish a good vision and rounding it in your values, energy programs make good business sense. And wastewater utilities are the foundation of a thriving community. They're foundation of our economies. And to really look at risks in that context of how to optimize your business systems and pull in opportunities where it comes up for these strategic investments or the sustainability circular economy work, it works for you. It doesn't have to work against you. But again, you have to have the grounding to plan and to follow your strategic objectives well defined to actually get you there, to take advantage of those opportunities.
Right. You touched on some really important things there that brought a question to mind. So you mentioned some technical processes, but then you also mentioned sort of convincing, like utilities have to answer to governing boards and staff and the community at large. So risk isn't just about those technical processes. It's about trust, right? So do you have any advice for utility leaders on communicating that risk clearly to those stakeholders and those decision makers to get, enterprise risk management through thoroughly?
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier, I'm on a mission regarding the communicating the total cost of ownership.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, being honest about that cost of ownership to our boards and electeds who are going to approve our rates, sharing the strategic objectives of my organization to do that. Really, I think we tend not to want to be transparent sometimes, but if we are clear about our risks and understand that cost of ownership, we're able to articulate the risk better. But if we're transparent, we can get shared decision making on those trade-offs. Like if we're going to add X, Y, and Z to our facility, what we can't do then are these other things, because we keep being expected to do more and more without the recognition that there's trade-offs, right? And making that as a high level of communication to our boards and electeds. Now, I mentioned earlier that we're not in this alone, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot more attention coming from bond rating agencies and insurers. And they're looking at the water sector and even providing, like some of the bond agencies are starting to downgrade water utilities. And nothing has changed except they're getting to realize that the underinvestment in existing infrastructure is a risk. And we are not keeping up. We are not keeping up with that aging infrastructure cost. We are not able to harden our assets even for sustainability sometimes because of our financial constraints. We can't invest in new water supply when there's increasingly difficult regulations to navigate. And so our long-term environmental risk mitigation really requires this kind of transparency to bring forth the true costs that we're faced as a utility. And when I think about how important this is, it's like if you're one utility, okay, you're trying to manage your rates for insurance and keep your bond rating high. When one utility is stressed, the whole industry is stressed. Like if everybody is a bad driver, your insurance rates are going to go up because
an
anybody who
accident's gonna
drives
happen.
is risky, right? So that's what I think about it. It's like it really needs that level of a scrutiny is there, and we can't hide in the sand anymore, and we can't. It's important that everybody recognizes that, right?
Yeah. And it's so important for long-term sustainability and resiliency. And that's what we're thinking through here with this. But here at the Water Online Show, we like to end our podcast with we call them the next first steps.
Mhm.
So you got to start somewhere, right? So for the utility leaders out there who are listening who may feel overwhelmed and unsure where to begin, what are one or maybe even two concrete first steps that they can take in the next, I don't know, say 90 days or so, to strengthen their risk-informed decision-making across their organization?
Yeah. I'm going to talk, and I don't know, you could decide if these are first steps and it's not going to be one or two, it might be four.
Let's go. Let's do four.
So,
bonus.
Like I said, I love models, and I'm a fan of organizational excellence. And part of being an excellent organization is having a solid mission, understood mission, a solid vision of where you're going to go in the future, and values and goals. Those all lead together. So we need to be clear about our strategic objectives, understand our organizational capacity to produce reliable, consistent services, our capacity to absorb all the uncertainties that we're faced with, our capacity to continue operations and build trust in our communities. So what are the practical tools that we have? Let's be clear about cost of ownership. What kind of risk tolerance do we have? How can we clearer to understand ourselves, but also communicate these trade-offs that happen? Whether we're explicitly doing it, understanding that we're doing it, sometimes we're just doing it reactively. Let's be honest about where we are. That to me is probably the biggest piece that I want to add. What about people and processes and partners? How can they help you be more resilient? Where are the push points against you that you can actually learn from and create better outcomes through that community? And then back to that honesty thing, I want us to be able to firmly articulate the cost of ownership. I want us to look at the impacts of the backlog and our operators and what kind of job descriptions we need today and into the future. What is that whole ball of our current state, and what does that need to look like when we get to a future desired state that we know would be a lower risk? Identify those gaps. To be honest, I want what I've said in the past too, which didn't go over very well at the time I said it. When I was young as a utility director, my first go round, and I was looking at our capacity to deliver what we were mandated to do on top of everything else. I was looking at our accomplishment rate, how much money we said we were going to spend that year and how much we actually spent. And the only conclusion I can get to is we really need to do fewer projects. If we were doing fewer projects, we'd be honest about the cost of delivery. We'd be honest about the capability of our organization, and we could look at boost that capability to deliver more projects. But if we keep doing, this treadmill that we're on, it's not sustainable.
I see the reasoning there. That seems sound.
Yeah. Well, but at the same time, there's all this external pressure, and it was difficult to get willingness for people to really want to hear the state of the current infrastructure and those trade-offs that we were making. I felt like, I feel like that's still kind of underground a little bit, and I want that to be explored a little bit more. Right. And the only other thing I would say is no utilities alone. You have partners, you have colleagues, you have, mentors within our utility. And the last thing I'm going to add is you cannot underestimate the power of organizational excellence. And there's models that one could look to actually build an organizational foundation that really helps you achieve your objectives clearly as you define them, and creates a staff and people who really want to be engaged in joining you in those outcomes. And when I look at organizational excellence, it's better for business, it's better for efficiencies, it's better for a million other things. But when it gets down to it, the best thing about it increases job satisfaction. Like, people know why they're there. They're the outcomes and outputs that they're creating become much more tangible and celebrated. So that's, I guess that would be my tips to leave you with. I don't know if those are next steps, but they're just concepts I'd like to share.
Certainly. I mean, yeah, I think when you basically said, first you got to know what you're dealing with and what you're looking to do. I mean, that would be the first step. And then all you did was carry us through the whole thing, which is just, that's great. That's even better than one step. And I'm sure people are hearing you. And I mean, you are the VP of Strategic Services at Brown and Caldwell. So strategy is your thing. And if people want to get a hold of you and your services and your expertise, is there any way that you would like to let them know to do that?
Yeah, I have an email, PELARDO @BRWNCALD.com. I'm on LinkedIn. That's always probably the easiest thing. All you need is my name. And be really happy to just engage with anybody. I'm here to make the industry better.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I wanted to be in consulting instead of in a specific utility now is I want to make the industry better, right? And I want to help everyone be better together. And it helps not just the viability of our industry. It really gets down to being the best service for the public that we can be at. And that's where it comes from. I mean, to convey the importance of what we do, it's really important to me to support our communities be able to afford and work with us to create the best outcomes. And that's why I'm here. And any way that I can help folks makes me happy.
And that's great, Pam. That really does come through with the way you talk and your passion. And we really appreciate you. I've been following you for quite a while, back since when you were a plant manager. I think I've been around a Water Online for quite a while, so I've kind of watched you the whole time, and your commitment to the water sector, I mean, is second to none. So we really thank you.
Thank you.
And we thank you for joining us once again here on the Water Online show. And we appreciate all of our viewers and listeners. And stay tuned for the next episode where we explore the next great topic. That's it for us. And on behalf of Travis Kennedy as well, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Pam. And we'll see you next time.